Meningitis, this is something you'll see quite common as a cause of death on the older ones. The meninges, this is obviously a structure of an individual's head that's been cross-sectioned. The brain is here. The spinal cord is here. The vertebrae come here and here and here. Then this structure, it's an orange that goes around the outer section of the brain and the spinal cord, but within the skull is the white line that goes around there. This is actually meninges. And sometimes they can become inflamed by an infection, and then you get meningitis. Actually, as I said, it was a very common cause of death back in historic times. And they also referred to it as brain fever. So if you saw something where an individual died of brain fever, they probably died of meningitis. Encephalitis is actually infection of the brain. So if we look at our picture here, now we're looking at structures that are within the brain itself being infected, not the outer section, like the meninges, but the actual inner sections. And you can actually have pus pockets, very similar to what the heart was showing earlier, that actually can dislodge different structures within the brain and cause compression and a lot of problems, and then actually lead to death. Pneumonitis, or pneumonia, is inflammation of the lungs. So here we have the lungs again. We have the windpipe or the trachea coming down, breaking off into the two different bronchi, and then to the bronchioles, out to the alveoli, which is the dead end section where the actual breathing occurs, and then the diaphragm, which is out here, that separates the abdomen from the chest cavity. Your heart would be in this area here, and this is how you, this is what's involved with breathing. And so if you have a pneumonitis or a pneumonia, that's an infection of the lungs. And there are a lot of different things you could call pneumonia back in the day. Lung fever, winter fever, or inflammation of the lung are all different ones that we've seen as causes of death, which would all be going back to referring to a case of pneumonia. Pulmonary is another word where you'll see associated with lung conditions, very similar to how nephra and renal have two different words that refer to kidney. Pulmonary and pneumo are both words that are associated with the lungs. So you might see, as we said or saw earlier, pulmonary tuberculosis was a tuberculosis of the lungs. Pleuritis or pleurisy. The pleura is actually very similar to the meninges, but surrounds the lung tissue within the chest. So if you actually cut this back, kind of like a saran wrap or more of a wax paper kind of wrap, you have two layers of it here, the parietal pleura and the visceral pleura, which is closer to the actual lungs. And then you can get an infection that actually occurs between these two layers, which would be your pleuritis, also known as pleurisy. This is actually a very painful condition where people have a very difficult time breathing because there's that kind of crinkles back and forth in there, and every time they take a breath, they get a lot of pain.